Hey everyone, my name is Boulevard and I'm going to be bringing you the action here for the King of Runeterra tournament hosted by Riot, Korea, and Inven. This tournament is a 3 vs 3 best of 5 modified conquest tournament, so I wanted to explain what that means before we get into the action. Each team has brought 5 decks and each region may be used twice within their lineup. There are no bans and no restrictions on what deck may be used in any game, except that no player may play a deck that their team has already won with. Each team must play all 3 players between games 1 and 3, and then may bring back any 2 for games 4 and 5. Once a team has won with 3 of their decks, they are declared the winner of the match. If you forget this or need to see it in writing, it'll be in the description below. Now, let's get into the action.
일단은 아래쪽은 이르마. 아까 말한 것처럼 럭스가 무난할 거라고 생각해서 그렇게 꺼낸 것 같은데
위쪽은 바이머딩거.
네, 위쪽은 이제 바이머딩거로 좀 그거를 맞춰줬어요.
사실 어제 바이머딩거가 그렇게 뭔가 강력한 모습 보여줬다기에는 좀
네.
네. 하이머딩거가 안 잡히고
하이머딩거가 안 잡히면 좀 힘든데
맞아요.
그래도 이제 하이머딩거만 어떻게 잡히면은 이즈리얼과 이제 럭스가 콤보를 완성하기 전에 좀 어떻게든 해결을 할 수 있지 않을까 생각이 들어요. 왜냐면 워낙 이제 지킬 수 있는 카드들이 많이 배치하고 있는 덱이다 보니까 바이 쪽으로 또 갖고 가는 것도 굉장히 좋습니다.
Alright everybody, welcome to game number 1. We have Chenia versus Black Team River versus Team Akdongs. We're going to get some Karma Ezreal versus Heimer Vi action. So the Ionia PZ mirror, as previously mentioned, the format's a little wild because your opponent does have so many decks. It can be a little hard to figure out what to open with, and even once your opponent is down one deck, they still have so many choices. It can actually be really hard to get the counter matchups in, and I do think that Heimer Vi is going to be favored in this matchup. Karma Ezreal just not going to get a lot of targets for the Ezreal off in the early game, but we don't see a Heimerdinger out of Chenia just yet, which is sort of the caveat of this matchup. Black has a lot of time to try and find this Ezreal. It's not imperative that he get it down on curve, but for Chenia, getting down this Heimer early is so important. And the Vi, a little bit hard to deal with typically, but we do see Thermo Beam and Will of Ionia in Black's hand. In fact, make that just a Will of Ionia as the Thermo Beam going to be fired off onto this Solitary Monk. Understands that this card threatens a lot of damage, and firing off the Thermo Beam instead of the Get Excited, which I like a lot. I really don't like playing Get Excited before the Chump Womp comes down, so having it in hand would just make it feel even worse. You could have gotten a Twin Disciplines out of your opponent's hand and then followed up with the Thermo Beam, but that really didn't look like a good discard target out of Black, and now even has the Rummage for the mushrooms. I've seen a lot of Karma Ezreal decks start to cut Rummage. I'm still a big fan of the card if you are playing Chump Womp. This does seem pretty different from the list that we've seen come out of America recently. Mostly just seeing Eye of the Dragon, Solitary Monk, and Shadow Assassin out of Karma Ezreals. If my memory serves, it's kind of easy to mix up the Heimer Vi and the Karma Ezreal deck since they are the same regional composition and have the same general strategies. So we're going to see a Flash of Brilliance get us started off here from Chenia. And then just the Get Excited onto the Chump Wump, discarding the True Shot Barrage. He's going to get a lot of procs for the Vi, and Claw of the Dragon going to come down now. Of course, it doesn't have the attack token. Will get a pretty decent open attack. And going to get the Vi down as well to threaten a lot of damage. With the Thermo Beam already fired off from Black, Chenia making a read that Will of Ionia is not going to come out, since we do line up perfectly on the 5 mana. And this is pre-patch 1.2. We actually won't be able to see a Thermo Beam kill this Vi, as she does still have the 5 HP. So this could be 8 damage coming in at Black, unless he wants to use the Will of Ionia. But taking a -1 for this feels pretty bad generally, but Black does have so many cards in hand. It does tick up the Ezreal. It's kind of a fine play. I don't hate it. Preserving your life total is definitely important. Heimer does have access to a lot of burn like you do, even though they don't have the karma to sort of double load down on that burn like they used to and you do. I do think you have to play a little preservedly. You do have to preserve your life total. Geez, why was that so hard to get out? And worth noting that the Will of Ionia onto the Vi actually does reset her attack total, so it makes it feel a little bit better. It's not a total waste, and now we just see Chenia totally overloaded with these Shadow Assassins. Definitely not going to feel bad about getting another one down here even. And Black could play the Karma, doesn't have any protection for it, especially not for 2 mana. Gonna get us started off with the Rummage onto the mushrooms. Wants to find something else. There's a lot in this deck that can be played to take out these 2 health units of Chenia, and just not finding any copies of them, it seems. both players in sort of a stalemate. Because we know the hands, we know that Black is actually really safe to get this Karma down. Would be a pretty good play, wouldn't feel bad about that. Of course, I think that Black is going to be leaning more towards eyeing either this Static Shock or Get Excited in order to turn on this Deep Meditation next turn. Looks like he might actually throw down the Karma, though. I definitely think that it's a big advantage for him if he can get this down this turn. Chenia doesn't really have a lot of cards in hand. The only answers for this also would be Thermo Beam or Get Excited. And if your opponent ever Get Excited before the Heimerdinger actually comes down, I definitely think that's something you're going to be happy with. Too often I see Heimerdinger players keeping things like Get Excited because they want the early damage and the early board clear, but you don't play Chump Wump in these decks anymore. You don't have the good discard targets like we see coming out of this Karma Ezreal from Black. Any Get Excited that you play is just going to be a -1 cut and dry. And I don't think Chenia has any play but to continue to run out the Shadow Assassins and try to get himself to this Heimerdinger. Deny picked up, not the best card in this matchup, will find use, but there's a deny for Black as well, so might just see a fight over that a little bit later on. Will of Ionia generated from the Karma, actually pretty valuable. Even if you can just get these down as tempo swings onto the Heimerdinger, it feels pretty good. But we are going to see the Vi replayed, so this Will of Ionia going to get a lot of value out here. Once again, going to reset the Vi, and because Chenia is running out of proactivity in hand, this Vi actually will remain rather small. Does have the second one, going to sit at 1 attack higher than the current Vi if it does get willed. And because there was 3 mana left for Chenia at the end of last turn, Black does know that there's nothing that threatens this Karma in Chenia's hand. Because the only things that threaten Karma in this deck are 3 mana, unless you want to throw a Will of Ionia onto it, which isn't out of the question. There's really not a lot of good Will of Ionia targets in the Karma Ezreal deck, but I don't think you want to be trading that off for your opponent's free spell, especially when you haven't had the Heimer yet, and you're down on cards. Looks like the Get Excited is going to get fired off as well, just to, once again, preserve the life total of Black. Rummage. Yeah, discarding 2 cards is a lot to ask. And it looks like he's going to hold back on this one. It's a little unfortunate for Black that these Shadow Assassins do exist on the side of Chenia. Because you know that there's no removal for the Karma, or it would have come down last turn, you know that there's no removal for the Ezreal either, but these elusives do just kind of stonewall the attacks, and you definitely don't want to be bumping off of those with the Ezreal. And we're actually going to see the deny onto the Will of Ionia, going to get the deny out of Black, and this just feels worse for Chenia. Anytime you're trading cards 1 for 1 with your opponent, and they have more cards than you, it's sort of like trading kills in League of Legends. You're perfectly happy to do it when you're behind. Definitely feels better. And the Hextech Transmogulator, that's a pretty good discard target, and that's about it. Ooh, the Mystic Shot's actually a pretty nice pickup. Looks like Black is counting the cards in hand to make sure this Deep Meditation is going to go off the way that he wants it to. And the Get Excited picked up from Black is not Heimerdinger, and going this long without seeing the Heimerdinger is sort of the downfall of the Heimer deck. If you can find Heimer on 5, this is one of, if not the best decks in the format. But if you don't, your deck really doesn't offer much. Vi has been a great supplementary plan for the deck as a whole over the course of her lifespan, but it's not great versus Karma Ezreal. We are constantly seeing Will of Ionia's come down onto her. She doesn't usually get a lot done because you don't want to be playing proactively, and we see the 3rd Vi picked up off this Shadow Assassin. If only any of these were a Heimerdinger, but Chenia finding the wrong champions. Looks like Deep Meditation will be fired off. Gonna pick up Thermo Beam and Mystic Shot. Yeah, just going to pass back the turn, fine floating the 3 spell mana, doesn't necessarily feel compelled to just throw down this Mystic Shot onto one of these, and we're going to see another Vi played. This one of 5/5, but as we know, there is still another Will of Ionia in Black's hand, this one randomly created by the Karma. The Mystic Shot fired off onto the Shadow Assassin actually makes me think there's a non-zero chance that this Thermo Beam comes down onto the other Shadow Assassin instead of being saved for a Vi, and it looks like that will be the case. It was a little hard to track, but I do think that Black knows that there is another Vi in Chenia's hand. I think this 5/5 Vi was not the one that was bounced by the Will of Ionia, and now we see Trail of Evidence picked up for Black. Generally more of a Heimerdinger card. It really isn't going to get a lot of value in this Ezreal deck, but This Ezreal has to be close to upgrading. At least 4 out of 8 if my memory serves, and with the Static Shock in hand... Excuse me. With the Static Shock in hand, it'll be pretty easy to actually finish that one out and start to win the game. We do see the Spirit's Refuge picked up, but since these Vi's haven't been connecting, and since the life total is still full for Chenia, it's not going to do anything. And I think we're going to see the Trail of Evidence saved for the Ezreal. Or fired off now. I'm not sure what Black could actually be looking for here. Finds a Navori Conspirator. Not sure what he was looking for. I know that that's not it. Perhaps hoping for a Mystic Shot for this Claw of the Dragon. Instead, just going to fire that off with the Get Excited. I think the Navori Conspirator could find more value than this Hextech Transmogulator necessarily would. There's no chance that the Transmogulator finds value if we do actually see Chenia pick up a Heimerdinger before the game ends, which isn't impossible. He does have 20 life still. This Karma is hitting the Enlighten turn, but with 3 Will of Ionia gone, Black is actually running out of protection for this Karma. Of course, we'll have a massive amount of refuel once the Karma's Inside of Ages comes down, and then the Rummage on the Enlighten turn. And once again, yeah, even with 9 mana, yeah, I think it's pretty likely that we see this Get Excited come down onto the Karma. This is the last turn that she's vulnerable. There's another Karma in Black's hand, and the Rummage will still be a great amount of refuel, but it's not as bad as letting this Karma sit around. Chenia hovering the eye, seeing how this all plays out. Unfortunately, just no Static Shocks or anything like that for Chenia. We have seen this Static Shock sitting in the hand of Black since turn 1. It's going to be the Twin Disciplines to protect this Claw of the Dragon. And then it looks like the Get Excited going to be fired off. I'd imagine, yeah, a Vi going to be the discard. You really don't need 3 copies of that card. Probably discarding the lowest one. I'm not sure if you can actually tell. Actually, because the Vi is getting bounced, Chenia was able to hover the eye and know which Vi was going to be the smallest. So the Karma finally taken out. The Inside of Ages turning back into a Karma for Black. The mana advantage on the side of Chenia. The game advantage still feels like it's in Black's favor. So he does have the Karma Ezreal at this point. Not necessarily sure that he fires off the Karma this turn. If a Vi comes down from Chenia, then it's not out of the question, but might wait until after Chenia has attacked on the following turn to get down the Karma. Knows that it's safe from the Vi, since he doesn't have any protection from the Vi at the moment, and it's going to be the smallest one played from Chenia. Second Eye of the Dragon, kind of likely. Double Mystic Shot actually will be able to take out this Karma, but we will get a Static Shock in response, which is extremely relevant. That should upgrade the Ezreals. That would be 4 targets, and you would draw 2 cards. But it's also possible that instead Black would fire off the Rummage just to get the most draw possible. I think the Ezreal upgrade is where you would have to prioritize. Especially with this low of a life total, you need to start proactively winning the game in some way. We might actually see the Ezreal itself come down from Black. Get a Mystic Shot down onto the Claw of the Dragon. Of course, doesn't have any protection from the Vi, so that seems pretty unlikely. Is going to be the Karma coming down now. And I'm curious to see if it's Rummage or Static Shock the play. Rummage would pretty much have to discard the Transmogulator and the second Eye of the Dragon. It's going to be the Will of Ionia onto the Karma. You don't necessarily feel compelled to fire anything off in response here. Of course, no Dragonlings are being created just yet, and you are only at 7 life. So Black actually starting to feel like they're on the back foot because all the Shadow Assassins came down and put down so much early pressure. Even though none of them found a Heimerdinger, they found their value in other ways, pressuring the life total of Black. There is a non-zero chance that this is GG even. We do still see 2 Mystic Shot in the hand of Chenia, which basically puts Black on 3 life, and with 2 3-attack attackers. Yeah, we're going to see the Rummage considered, not fired off. Okay, it will be the Static Shock. This could even be the Spirit's Refuge coming down onto the Claw of the Dragon to protect it from the static shock. It seems a little unlikely to me, though. That would have to be a really... I don't even want to say heads up play. It just feels like a really awkward play. Your opponent is tapped out, so you know that the Claw would live for the following turn. It's possible that Chenia, yeah, I see him scrolling through the bar there, trying to see what has been played so far. Knows that if this Claw of the Dragon survives, he's got a pretty good shot at lethal next turn with the double Mystic Shot, but with your opponent drawing 2 cards, what are the odds that they don't find something to deal with this Claw of the Dragon later on? Ezreal already at 6 out of 8 it seems, so this is actually going to put him at 10 out of 8, which means the Ezreal will be upgraded, which you figure is going to happen one way or another when the double up static shock comes out. And leaving your opponent with Karma Ezreal in hand is definitely scary for Chenia. It is going to feel compelled to go for lethal on the following turn if he can find it. Yeah, decides that Spirit Refuging is just too low a percentage play with how many cards your opponent is going to see between now and then. And actually, this does mean that Black could have fired the Static Shock at face and the Claw of the Dragon. Oh, and we're going to see the double Mystic Shot onto the Eye of the Dragon. Sorry, so many of the Dragon cards have been played, it took me a second to remember. So yeah, Eye of the Dragon going down does mean that this Vi is going to be able to just go for an attack. We're going to see the Vi's Vault Breaker. And there's nothing out of Black at the moment. Does have a Rummage to fire off. Although it would have to be the 3rd Will of Ionia from the main deck. We've seen him play 3 already. Of course, 1 was created by the Karma randomly. Hanging on still to this Hextech Transmogulator. Static Shock and Shadow Assassin. Yep, there's all 3 Shadow Assassins picked up by both players over the course of the game, but Chenia got him down first and got the damage in with him, and that is going to be game number 1 going over to Chenia with the Heimer Vi that never saw a Heimerdinger. Definitely not how you expect this matchup to play out in terms of actual cards being played. I did mention earlier that I thought the Heimer Vi was favored, but this is not how I imagined it going.
미포 세주라고 야로고예요. 미포 세주 미포킨. 미포 일단 서로 화끈한 대결. 미포 세주 미포킨. 네.
그렇죠. 그렇다고 봤을 때 일단은 앞쪽이 좀 더 저는 괜찮은 것 같아요. 저 미포 세주 쪽보다는 미포킨 쪽이 그래도 좀 초반.
Game number 2 here, we're going to see Dawn versus Pegasos, 2 returning titans from the Korean Invitational back at the beginning of the esports life of Legends of Runeterra. It looks like we're going to see another Bilgewater Sejuani deck, this one looking very similar to the one that we saw out of Team King. Warning Shot, Jagged Butcher play on turn 1. Likely not going to happen. I think that we're going to stick around, save that for turn 2 so that we can get off the Pilfered Goods as well. And it looks like MF Scouts out of Pegasos. The jury's still out on whether or not this is Scouts or Bannerman. It feels like Bannerman if the things like Cytheria of Cloudfield are coming out. Generally don't see that in the Scout deck. So we'll have to see as time goes on. And MF Sejuani on the side of Dawn is actually going to fire it off turn 1 for the Jagged Butcher, saying I don't want to take any damage from this little Cytheria here. And the open attack, pretty likely, nothing else can really come out. Not sure if he wants to go for the open attack. We've seen it not come out. Now Pegasos has to decide whether or not they want to block and lose the Cytheria or go ahead and turn on something like a Pilfered Goods. And without Bannerman in hand, like we saw last time, it's a little bit of a more of a decision that's reasonable. It is actually going to sacrifice the Cytheria. Decides that it's not worth letting my opponent get the plunder off. Dawn looking a little disappointed that the Sejuani tick-up doesn't come up this turn. Fleet Feather Tracker coming down, likely to be followed up by the Brightsteel Protector on the following turn, can get a fair amount of value. Dawn's hand's actually really weak, just 2 Fury of the North and the Wolf Rider. Hired Gun coming out, but that's not going to change much. Could even just, yeah, MF going to be the play instead. This one does get punished out by Fury of the North a little bit harder, but it looks like Dawn playing the Hired Gun first. I think that, okay. I was going to say I would actually like to see the Fleet Feather Tracker onto the Hired Gun since you do have the Make It Rain to take out this Jagged Butcher next turn. This does let the Fleet Feather Tracker survive though, so I'm definitely not mad at the play. Also, the Make It Rain play would lose to Fury of the North, so looks like Pegasos just having a better read on the situation than I would have. Singer's Courier picked up. Okay, this could still just be Bannerman. with MF and Citrus Courier, the two Bilgewater cards. Definitely something we've seen in the past. Doesn't necessarily mean it's a scout deck. I don't think we see Citrus Courier in too many of the scout decks anyway, so I'm going to go ahead and stick to my guns here. Do you get it, guns? Because it's a Misfortune deck. And say that it's a Bannerman deck. So now we see the Hired Gun challenge onto the Misfortune, the Make It Rain coming down to clear out the board of Pegasos, as well as trigger the Plunder. And there's nothing that Pegasos can do to save this. Single combat still does the damage to the MF. Make It Rain not going to take out anything on the side of Dawn. And as I mentioned, this is where the Make It Rain is. Where did the Make It Rain go for Pegasos? It just disappeared like a rabbit up his sleeve. Either that or he has windmill slammed this Misfortune so quickly post-combat that we actually couldn't see it. Okay, there it is. Just a little bit of a disappearing act from the Misfortune, hiding as her clone was destroyed by the Hired Gun in the Make It Rain. And yeah, Badger Bear seems like a bit of a safer play. No real reason to get the MF down on a turn that you're not going to be attacking. We see Wolf Rider come out, gonna tick up the mana crystals for Dawn. Of course, doesn't really have much to do with it. I do like getting that down over the Pilfered Goods, though. As weak as Dawn's hand is, you do need to maintain board presence, and getting more mana crystals just plays a little bit better towards your top decks. If a Sejuani had come out off the top or something, would be available to play right now. In the meantime, it does just have MF Fury of the North available for the turn. You're going to see a Misfortune come down from Pegasos over the Quinn, which makes sense. Valor, without Misfortune, not strong enough to take out this Wolf Rider. And Dawn is almost certainly going to have to use a Defensive Fury of the North this turn. It is a +4/+4, so you don't feel bad about that, but with the single combat in Pegasos' hand, as well as the Brightsteel Protector, I don't think this Defensive Fury of the North is actually going to feel that good. We're even going to see it thrown down on the Misfortune so that everything can attack this turn. Never mind. Throwing out onto the Badger Bear, which probably means just a Badger Bear and Brightsteel Protector attack coming out of Pegasos. Yeah, Dawn just sitting with these two Fury of the North, not really going to do a whole lot here, especially in the face of this single combat. But I do feel like you really want to trade onto the Badger Bear with this Fury of the North. Realistically, 8 damage is a swing that you can take. Looks like Dawn is agonizing over the decision just a little bit. Pegasos looks like they're hoping that this works out. And it looks like it's going to. Just going to be 8 damage push through. I don't think either player is particularly pleased with that. Pegasos would have preferred to get some trades off. Dawn would have preferred not to take 8 damage, but with the barrier coming down, it just didn't feel like a very good Fury of the North play. And now both players drawing pretty weak spells. We see a Make It Rain out of Dawn, the Ranger's Resolve out of Pegasos. This Misfortune attack. Yeah, we're going to see Fury of the North almost certainly come down onto the MF to protect her. Ranger's Resolve negating the Misfortune ability really doesn't feel that impactful this turn. Really depends on what comes out of this Pilfered Goods. And there's a lot that could come out because this is a Bannerman deck still, I believe. We're actually going to see the Ranger's Resolve. This does mean that the Badger Bear would theoretically live, although we do know that the Fury of the North is coming out regardless. And it doesn't feel like there's a lot of space for this Ranger's Resolve to get value at any point, and it doesn't impact the plays for Pegasos' turn at all, so I don't hate seeing it get fired out here. We are going to see the Fury of the North onto the MF, going to take out the Badger Bear, so this is actually going to even up the board to just an MF for both players, but Pegasos has the stronger rebuild with the Quinn. Dawn really hoping that he gets something good off these Pilfered Goods. If it is a Bannerman deck, there could be Cytherea the Bold, although generally I don't think we see that in the MF Quinn decks. Citrus Courier seems to be about as 6-drop heavy as they want to go. Yeah, there's the MF ability coming out, not doing anything thanks to the Ranger's Resolve, and then here is only 1 damage pushed through by the Wolf Rider thanks to the Ranger's Resolve and the Tough ability. Now we're going to see Quinn come out. Alright, Pilfered Goods, what do you have for us? Oh, Badger Bear Grizzled Ranger's a pretty good pickup. That's about as good as you could get for Dawn.
오소리 기동대 저 삽니다. 저 저거
It is very awkward into the MF Quinn, although I'm hard-pressed to imagine a board state that doesn't feel awkward into the MF Quinn. So that one's kind of tomato-tomato. We even see the Citrus Courier on the side of Pegasos to help kind of double down on that on the following turn. Yeah, things looking a little awkward here for Dawn. I must admit, I don't actually love the Citrus Courier in the Demacia decks. It feels like a pretty unimpactful card when you have absolutely no way to trigger it on your opponent's turn. Yeah, Grizzled Ranger really doesn't feel great here because it will just get challenged out by Valor. Oh, actually, it looks like we're going to go for the Quinn attack as well, as we are challenging out the Misfortune with Valor. I thought you would just want to take the free trade on to the Grizzled Ranger. Not going to be the case. Although I do think this sets him up for some more... Okay, yeah. See, the problem with challenging onto the Misfortune straight away, I feel, is that it sets up your second attack to be a lot more awkward. You could just throw down this Cytherea of Cloudfield and throw her away willy-nilly just to get the attack triggers for your Misfortune and Quinn. And we're going to see the second Fury of the North fired off, so Dawn actually finally finding some uses for these. Going to continuously pump up this Misfortune, who will fall down to 3 health again, but with both scouts taken out for Pegasos, would rely on just throwing away this Citrus Courier or the Cytherea of Cloudfield. I meant throwing away the Cytherea of Cloudfield, but because they both start with C and I was looking at Citrus Courier, that's what came out. I actually don't hate the Citrus Courier here play. I think it is your best bet to actually get value for the MF this turn. So I like something like challenging Valor onto the Misfortune. You can even single combat in response to the Make It Rain. Actually going to see Cytherea of Cloudfield come out first. That's fine. Pegasos can still play out his entire hand with the mana available to him, so I think this is fine. Going to see the Omen Hawk come down. This also makes Make It Rain a little less likely to hit Valor. 2 out of 4 on the Misfortune. Does mean that she'll actually upgrade this turn with the Citrus Courier, which I think means I would like to hold back the Cytherea of Cloudfield. I don't really think that you want to just throw her into the Badger Bear when you can just wait until the Citrus Courier goes off, get the MF up to 4, and then the attack deals 3, would rip through anything. Yeah, I'm not actually sold on this Cytherea attack. We do see the Make It Rain even... Looks like it missed Valor, which means a little bit. It does mean that the single combat gets saved for Pegasos. He did have the answer for it. Dawn not looking particularly pleased with the low roll Make It Rain. I believe, if I remember correctly, Dawn had a bad string of luck in the Korean Invitational as well. I believe he was on the receiving end of Gagong Singh's massive troop of Elnooks. We get a quick perspective switch here. Oh, switch back. The cameraman playing some tricks on me. But yeah, the Make It Rain missing the Valor does just mean the single combat doesn't have to come out. I still think the relative play lines of the turn are going to be the same. Citrus Courier going to come out to get the Misfortune evolution. Looking at the 4/4 Overwhelm. Not actually sure what Pegasos is considering here. I don't think your single combat is doing anything here. Yeah, it's just going to go ahead and pass that one over. Not totally sure what he was mulling over this entire time, but Citrus Courier has to be the play here, right? There's no better time for this to come down. Being able to rip through your opponent's board with everything does mean that 7 damage is going to be going through to Dawn this turn, because the Misfortune upgrade has Overwhelm, something that a lot of people forget because the game tends to end as soon as she upgrades, generally from the ability itself, not necessarily from the damage. And we're just going to see the Omen Hawk blocked out. No reason to throw the Badger Bear out there, it would just die. The Overwhelm comes through anyway. Might as well keep that one around if you can, but with the single combat and a Citrus Courier lining up pretty well onto the Badger Bears, I don't see a way for Dawn to come back into this one. Of course, both players are so low on cards that there are a lot of impactful top decks that could come out. A Sejuani off the top would swing things back for him very favorably, but that's not going to be the case. The concern for me, even if Dawn were to pick up a Sejuani, is that all of Pegasos' copies of Misfortune are upgraded now. All he has to do is find another copy and attack with it, and the game will end, as there is no healing coming out of either player. That misfortune at 0 out of 4, much less intimidating than the one on Pegasos' field. And with this Grizzled Ranger coming out and no Sejuani on this turn specifically, I'm not seeing any way for Dawn to come back in. And I think we have entered limbo here, the state where the game has ended, the game is over but has not ended. One of these days I'll get that tagline right. If I'm gonna coin this phrase of limbo, then I really need to make sure that I can consistently, properly say it. Looks like, okay, single combat actually going to get saved. Just going to be a couple of blocks. Doesn't really care about anything that Dawn has. Just needs to get this MF attack off. As I said, there's no healing in Dawn's deck. So, and a warning shot off the top definitely doesn't feel good. And that's going to be game number 2. Going to Pegasos, tying this one up. Team Akdongs tying it up with Team King. Or Team River, rather. I think it's Team River versus Team Akdongs. Yes.
잘하는 거 들고 왔어요.
자, 이제 8강전에서 보여줬던 덱이죠. 네. 인내하는 자들 덱과 데마시아. 네, 구금덱. 네.
근데 이렇게 구금이 있다면 저는 괜찮다고 봐요.
Now, as is the problem with a couple of Korean tournaments coming from an English casting background, I have had to rely on Google Translate for some of the names, so I believe that this one is going to be Crocodile versus Kang, so-yean. It's going to be Bannerman with Freljord versus Endor Spiders, seeing the old school sort of champion lineup come out of Elise, Thresh, Tryndamere. We've seen a lot of variation in the Endor Spider champion lineup recently, and I'm actually kind of curious what Freljord card is coming out from Kang, so-yean. Generally, Fury of the North or Omen Hawk is the answer, and we do see an Omen Hawk actually on the side of Crocodile. Even going to block out this Cythria with it, does have the Vile Feast, hovers over the Withering Wail there to sort of let everyone know that that is a plan. And we see absolutely no units left in the hand of Crocodile. This is, okay, a Hapless Aristocrat picked up off the top is going to feel pretty good. Looks like the Vile Feast coming down. And a really good curve on the side of Kang, so-yean. It doesn't always feel great to play something like the Brightsteel Protector naked like this. No value to be gained from it. Generally, you like to save it for the attack turns if you can anyway. But it does just line up as a really good blocker onto this Spiderling. And a couple of Badger Bears gonna come out on turns 3 and 4. And the Rangers, so the one thing that I do want to note for this game so far is that we do see a Rangers Resolve out of Kang, so-yean and a Withering Wail out of Crocodile. And Rangers Resolve has definitely felt like one of, if not its best use, is just counter target Withering Wail. I would be pretty surprised to see an attack from Crocodile here. No reason not to block with it. A second Brightsteel Protector picked up to a second Grasp of the Undying. So far, the lack of units from Crocodile could come back to bite them. The Hapless Aristocrat going to help stall out the board a little bit more. We are just going to see the attack from the Loyal Badger Bear, going to get blocked out by the Spiderling. Sets this up for a Grasp of the Undying. Keeps your Aristocrat contesting onto this Brightsteel Protector. Pretty good block. Pretty cut and dry play so far from both players. Just kind of playing the cards that they have the curve. And yeah, more spells picked up by Crocodile. This is not looking good for them. The Grasp's going to be fired off, and there's a good chance that the Rangers Resolve comes down here. Yeah, it looks like that is going to be the case. I definitely don't hate this. Rangers Resolve is a card that we've seen sort of sit in players' hands too long, just trying to find the perfect moment to get value out of it. When anytime that you can use a 1-mana spell to just more or less negate a kill spell is definitely going to feel pretty good. Going to continue to get closer to the Strum of Badger Bears. And just a pass from Crocodile. Doesn't have any good attacks thanks to this second Badger Bear coming down. And a Thresh picked up. That's actually a pretty big swing. He's going to be a 4/7. We see the Purify picked up from Kang, so-yean. You'd love to see that. That's actually... I cannot understate, or overstate rather, how impactful this Purify can be once They Who Endure starts coming down for Crocodile, who has a very small Endure at the moment. It's currently sitting at a 3/3 if my math has served me correctly. And now Kang, so-yean actually throwing the Brightsteel Protector into harm's way. Looks like Crocodile thinking about removal options for the turn. I think it's pretty likely that we just see a block onto the Brightsteel and the Thresh come down after the fact. Although Fury of the North, definitely a consideration. Could trade onto this Badger Bear, get the Thresh down on the attack turn. No real reason to get the Thresh down pre-combat. Your opponent's pretty unlikely to play anything into the Thresh other than a Bannerman. Actually, we do see a lot of... I take it all back. On Kang So-yean's side, we actually do see a fair amount of protection if Thresh doesn't come down on this turn from Crocodile. If it gets played, instead of being able to open attack with it, then Brightsteel Protector and Bannerman both sort of take that one off the table. Actually, I think it would need to be both of them. If you Brightsteel Protector onto the 4/4, Thresh just gets the challenge out the 1/1. If you Bannerman, Thresh still gets the challenge onto the 5/2 Badger Bear. So, because there's two prime targets for the Thresh, I don't actually think playing it and then attacking matters that much. Going for the open attack, not as impactful. We're going to see the Withering Wail take out a Badger Bear and soften up another one for this Grasp of the Undying. And that does put Radiant Guardian on the table as an option here for Kang So-yean. Pretty decent curve out. Yeah, just going to throw that one down. No reaction from Crocodile, actually. Been a pretty expressive player so far. A little surprised to see no reaction on the Radiant Guardian. Perhaps just saw this one coming. And Cytherea the Bold, Kang So-yean just finding a beautiful Bannerman curve so far. We see Crocodile pass, so this is something that we actually see happen a lot, specifically versus Bannerman. You know that your opponent wants to set up the board more than you do, and because Crocodile has the Thresh, sort of baiting Kang So-yean to play something else out, maybe a better target for the Thresh, since the only option right now is a Badger Bear. If we do see the pass from Kang So-yean, she only gets to push through 3 damage at most. Or 4 damage at most, rather. Yeah, gonna be the Bannerman and a whiff. I don't think we've seen a Bannerman hit today, which is extremely surprising given the very small amount of units or non-Demacia cards in either of the decks. Sorry, tripping over my words a little bit, but I don't think we see anything other than the Thresh come down is going to be the play. This Atrocity just kind of sitting dead in Crocodile's hand. The Endures are still very small, but there's a Tryndamere in the deck, and if we can see Thresh make his way over to that one, then we could see a party get started here, and the life totals start to swing heavily in the favor of Crocodile, but we're a little bit ways off of that one. Don't want to get ahead of myself. But Kang So-yean looks like considering the Brightsteel Protector to save the Badger Bear, as it is the most impactful thing that Thresh could kill this turn. Yeah, definitely like this play. Protecting your higher attack unit. It will get traded onto by the Thresh next turn anyway. But actually just see a pass from Crocodile, not wanting to sacrifice the health of the Thresh onto these 3 attack units. Oh, and we do see the Tryndamere picked up. Put everything that I said last turn back on the table. We are not far away from it. Tryndamere can be coming down next turn, and with the Atrocity and the Fury of the North in hand, we could even see a 1-turn lethal from 20 to 0 out of Crocodile. Would be a 12 attack Tryndamere, depending on how much overwhelm damage came out. And that's not something you can purify. Kang So-yean going for the open attack rather than get the Cytherea down. I think this is pretty fine. Cytherea doesn't actually add much in terms of the fearsome here. Obviously, pushing through the extra damage is a little bit nice, but it gives your opponent an opportunity to just get down more blockers. Crocodile, not sure where to throw this Thresh. Pretty sure it lands in front of the Badger Bear there. Fury of the North gonna come out onto the Spiderling. Gonna make it a 5/5, but there's Tough from the Radiant Guardian. It looks like Crocodile a little... You can see the shock on their face. Not particularly happy with this. Perhaps forgot about the Tough there for a second. Maybe it's a soften up play for the Grasp of the Undying, but it definitely just looks like a mistake. And now, now with Fury of the North coming out onto the Badger Bear, this is actually disastrous for Crocodile. Grasp of the Undying might come down onto the Badger Bear just to help finish it off. Might come down on... Okay, gonna go on the Bannerman instead. Not gonna be the case. The preservation of life total doesn't feel as impactful as controlling the board here. This is just going to reset this Badger Bear back down to a 4/3. I would like to think that the Fury of the North was specifically to set up for the Grasp of the Undying. We're actually going to see the Grasp, or the Glimpse Beyond come out onto the Thresh. That actually makes a fair amount of sense. The Badger Bear is going to reset back to a 4-4 at the end of the turn. Letting your Thresh die just makes it a 4-3, so I do like getting the draw off here for the cards. And I do think that this Tryndamere Atrocity has... Ooh, double Atrocity actually works pretty well with Tryndamere. Because of the way that the champion works, where it dies and then it comes back as a bigger version of itself. So now it's just up to Crocodile. Not valuing the spell mana makes a lot of sense. I think it's pretty likely that the Tryndamere comes down next turn, which means that you don't have mana for any spell in your hand. No need to actually preserve the spell mana. Instead, get down your Hapless Aristocrat. Not Hapless. Everything that I see in the Spider deck with the Last Breath is Hapless Aristocrat to me. Its name is Avarosan Sentry, and he's a good boy, and he's going to get to draw a card. We are going to see the Tryndamere come down. The chances of a second whiff on this Bannerman are nearly impossible. And we're going to see the Cytherea instead. Makes a bit of sense. You don't really need to get the stats down onto any of these guys. It would have been nice to be able to block out the Tryndamere with something like the Bannerman, but since you do have the Badger Bear, I don't think you're actually particularly worried about it. And we're actually just going to see a pass out of Crocodile. Not going for the attack with the Tryndamere. Instead, I guess going for double Atrocity with it. We are going to have to see a block onto Cytherea with the Avarosan Sentry. And then it looks like Tryndamere will be lining up in front of this Radiant Guardian. Atrocity going to come down. But onto what? There is a chance for Crocodile to clear out more of the board if they're so inclined. This Grasp of the Undying does still take out the Radiant Guardian, and you could throw this Tryndamere in front of the Badger Bear or something like that. Avarosan Sentry can only block Cytherea, so I think we are going to see that put back. And Crocodile sort of balancing out which is better, the Atrocity or the Grasp of the Undying. Will be the Grasp onto the Bright Steel Protector. I'm not sure how I feel about this one. You could have blocked the Badger Bear instead and thrown the Grasp onto the Radiant Guardian. Just get a bigger unit off the field. The extra damage onto the Tryndamere doesn't make much of a difference. I'm not sure which one actually preserves more of the life total. My play puts Crocodile at 7. Crocodile's play puts them at 7? Alright, so it looks like it's actually even health-wise, because it is 1 more damage, but he's also getting off 1 more life steal with the Grasp, so I guess it doesn't actually make a difference in the end. But it does mean that there's more health on the side of Kang so-yean's field in terms of the Tryndamere Overwhelm. And now actually we see a 7/7 They Who Endure picked up, just 1 mana shy of actually getting it down though. We see the sad Poro come out of Crocodile. I'm actually not sure how this one plays out. This Endure isn't big enough to end the game with the Tryndamere and the 2 Atrocities. At least not yet, but since we are going into Crocodile's attack turn, I think that the Overwhelm should be enough. Of course, we do see the Purify for Kang so-yean that we mentioned earlier is going to completely take this Endure option off the table, which I do believe means that Kang so-yean is going to pick this one up. Would have been an uphill battle for Crocodile even without the Purify. I think they would have had the narrowest opportunity to actually get it done in terms of damage, because you can't just attack with 2 Overwhelm units. It's a little bit scary because the Endure is only at 7, so actually the Cytherea would be able to trade onto that. So you would have to fire off the Atrocity right away. So I'm actually not convinced that this one went the way of Crocodile even without the Purify from Kang so-yean, but thinking about where they want to put this Bright Steel Protector barrier, if they even want to play it out this turn. Crocodile, looks like they're getting a little bit excited, thinks they have the opportunity for lethal. And I think we have entered limbo at this point, the mystical magical place where the game is over but has not ended. And there's really no wrong time to Purify. Obviously you want to wait until your opponent commits something more to the Endure. If you can get an Atrocity out of your opponent with the Purify, that feels absolutely phenomenal. So I guess the wrong time would be any time before the Atrocity comes out, but with this barrier onto the Cytherea, it even makes the attacks from Crocodile a little more awkward, especially the Endure attack. And I do think I actually would have liked to see Glimpse Beyond come down onto the Avarosan Sentry before the Endor was played, just so that it couldn't get blocked out by the Cythria like this. But yeah, now even just going to be a pass from Crocodile. Will have 12 mana to play double Atrocity, but that only represents 16 damage. We see another Endor come out now. This is a lot of damage coming back at Crocodile, though. We might even have to see this Atrocity used as removal, because otherwise they are just dead. Yeah, any 2 attackers from Kang does end the game, which means Atrocity is going to have to be used defensively. Endor lining up on a Cythria, Tryndamere onto that. Yeah, it's so weird to talk about the blocks because the players have so much time to rearrange them. Actually, yeah, because I forgot, because Crocodile has 2 non-fearsome blockers, it actually would take both Atrocity defensively in order to survive the game, and I don't think that even in the best of circumstances, Crocodile comes back from that. And because the Purify exists in the hand of Kang, yeah, this should just be lethal this turn. The second Atrocity does have to come out from the Endor onto a unit, and then the Purify taking out the Atrocity, or the Endor's attack, is actually going to be lethal, as it will not be able to kill the War Chef. Did Crocodile time out? It looks like Crocodile timed out. Oh my gosh, Crocodile actually going down, never even knowing that the Purify was there. That was something of a game for sure.
King of Runeterra.
한 번 더 들고 온 건가요? 아니면은 또 저희가 서순을 좀 화면을 확인을 해야 될 것 같아요.
네, 이거 좀 봐야 될 것 같기는 해요. 아까
럭르마 덱이 지금 둘 다 있다 보니까 미포세주 덱이 아마도 미포세주 덱이 던 선수겠죠? 네. 던 선수가 미포세주 같고 그다음에 깡동 선수가 럭르마.
Alright, our first game 4 of the day does mean that we get to see the return of players for the first time. Dawn versus Black here. Team River leading by 2. Team Akdongs down on their last leg, fighting for their tournament life. Going to be switching over to the Karma Lux, and we are going to see Dawn picking up that that Misfortune Sejuani. Not sure where I got the Ezreal from. But yeah, it looks like a pretty good start from Dawn. This is the first time I believe that we saw this deck not open with the Warning Shot Jagged Butcher, but actually does have a fairly expensive hand, but 2 Wolf Riders to Sword and make up for it. And a Pilfered Goods even means that there will be a lot to get done on the side of Dawn. But this Badger Bear means that there's not a lot of time or room to do it. Of course, Black's hand is actually looking pretty strong in the mid game, but a little weak on the following turn, and perhaps even the turn after. Concentrated Strike can sort of push out a fair amount of removal options, take some things off the board, and it will be the attack with the Badger Bear. I feel like so far this tournament, we've seen players really getting baited by people just passing back pre-combat, choosing not to take any actions. Of course, we do know that in Dawn's hand, there's just nothing great to play, and we're not going to see a block because Dawn needs as many attackers as possible for the next turn to try and get through and get this Wolf Rider off. Radiant Guardian picked up. Doesn't help out the curve of Black at all, but does give them a better option than a turn 5 Karma. Dawn got a couple of options this turn. Could just throw down the Naked Wolf Rider because it does have Overwhelm and contest the Badger Bear. Gives a much better option in terms of actually pushing through the Allegiance this turn. Or the Plunder, rather. I say Allegiance because we do see Dawn get the Allegiance trigger of the Yordle Grifter and pick up a Grizzled Ranger. It's a little bit awkward because while that is a very good card to pick up, there isn't an opportunity to play it here or anytime soon. I think the Wolf Rider's a little more likely to come down this turn in the next. And also just a little overloaded on the 4-drop slot at the moment, much how with a second Karma pickup, Black is actually pretty overloaded on 5 drops. And we're going to get things started off with just the swing from the Badger Bear, checking the Sejuani upgrade potential, how far along we are on that. The Misfortune, just kind of refamiliarizing himself with his opponent's cards. We do see Make It Rain, letting this Jagged Butcher trade onto the Grizzled Ranger. Nothing that you really want to do about that. Concerted Strike coming out would be a little bit wild just to protect that. When you do have a Radiant Guardian that you can get down. Of course, as far as I've seen, this Bilgewater Freljord deck is actually pretty light on removal. Getting down the Karma is a possibility, but just because you have the opportunity to play a naked, uncontested Karma doesn't mean that you should. And we do see Black go for the Radiant Guardian. I like this a lot more. Getting the 5/5 tough lifesteal, fighting for the board a lot better than just generating the random spell off Karma, as you don't really want to block with Eye of the Dragon or Karma. You can wait a little bit to get those down, but I think it's going to be a while before the Karmas actually start to come down. Lux seems a little more likely if we don't get an open attack out of Dawn. And the Pilfered Good's going to pick up 2 Remembrance, and then the Black Market Merchant off the top for Dawn, and a 3rd Lux picked up by Black. I think that makes it pretty cut and dry that Lux is coming down this turn. You really want to start to get those out, as well as gives you the potential of Prismatic Barrier for this Eye of the Dragon or Radiant Guardian if anything comes down to threaten it. Gonna get us started off with a Hired Gun. We'll be able to put vulnerability down on that Radiant Guardian, which is actually pretty impactful. That card is something that generally you want to see as a very valuable blocker that you can sort of mix and match with, line up the tough in the best possible ways. Dawn not giving you the option. Only 5 mana left, though, and 2 plunder effects that he wants to get off. It's a little bit awkward. Do you go for the Black Market Merchant? Do you go for the Wolf Rider? I think Merchant's a little more likely. It's pretty likely that we just see, like, Riptide Rex come down on the following turn with the Warning Shot. Depends on how much damage actually gets pushed through onto the Radiant Guardian this turn. The Lux definitely makes Dawn's attacks a little more awkward. If he does want to swing out, he does guarantee get through at least a little bit of damage to turn on either the Wolf Rider or the Merchant. But with how awkwardly things line up for the rest of his units, it would just throw away a lot of the board to get this done. Yeah, and we actually do just see a pass from Dawn. I think that makes a little bit more sense. Not wanting to overvalue getting off the plunder abilities of the Merchant or the Wolf Rider, especially the Wolf Rider. Since you are going into turn 8, you don't really need to get into turn 9. Doesn't really do anything for you, especially given how much it would cost you the board, and not throwing out the Warning Shot, as you would only get 1 plunder effect off that turn. And we might see it come out for the Riptide Rex this turn. It still feels a little awkward since there is a full health Radiant Guardian on your opponent's field. The chances of you actually clearing through the board are pretty low, but if you can kill off everything other than the Radiant Guardian, you're definitely not going to complain about that, though. I think the chances of that happening are actually pretty low. You'd want to you'd be forced to try and high roll onto the Lux, and we do know that there is Prismatic Barrier on the side of Dawn. I do like this a little bit more now. The Karma, a pretty good target for the Rex. You're going to fire that off, and let's see where they line up. Looks like it will be a pretty bad Riptide Rex, all things considered. While it does leave Lux and Karma at 1 HP, outside of Make It Rain and really just Make It Rain, I was going to say Misfortune, but that's not really how this works. There's really nothing to take out the 1 health Lux or Karma. It is a pretty strong attacker on the side of Dawn, but once again, Dawn just, I believe the unluckiest player in terms of RNG that I have ever had the pleasure to cast is Dawn. I think that's sort of the title that he holds in my mind. We saw it a little bit earlier with the bad Make It Rain onto the Valor. We saw it earlier in the Korean Invitational back in March. Yeah, just I think Dawn. If we have a end of the year wrap up for Legends of Runeterra, Dawn definitely gets my vote for unluckiest player. At least for the time being. There is still a lot of year left. We are just crusting into June now. And it looks like it'll be a pass from both players. Makes a bit of sense. No real great attacks for this Radiant Guardian. But since it was softened up by the Rex, the Vulnerable feels a lot more impactful now. Of course, we do see a lot of removal options in Black's hand. And while I don't think the game is over by any means, I do think that Black is currently heavily favored, which doesn't feel like a radical statement when he does have out Lux and Karma. Misfortune, not a bad top deck, does actually give Dawn an opportunity to kill these out if, you know, or at least take the barriers off the table or sorry, it takes Karma and Lux off the table as blockers. The only reason they were on the table before was because of the prismatic barriers, but now with Misfortune ripping through the prismatic barriers, you don't even want that to happen. It will be the concerted strike actually coming down to kind of put those back on the table as an option, because you do want to kill this Riptide Rex. It is a very big unit, and you don't want to Will of Ionia. You can't block it with the Radiant Guardian because it's going to get pulled to the side by something else, likely a hired gun. Actually, the quick flick onto the health potion from Black does remind me that that could come out onto either the Lux or the Radiant Guardian, seem like the most likely. And we even see Sejuani down onto the Lux now. That's going to be a prismatic barrier for her most likely. But with so much overwhelm on the side of Dawn, he's actually in a pretty good spot. This is why I said I felt like the game wasn't over. While Black does have the Karma Lux, he doesn't really have the cards in hand or removal options to sort of take advantage of them just yet. It looks like we're going to see Health Potion onto Karma, and that is going to upgrade the Lux. Only on 5 mana does mean that a second Lux isn't going to be able to come down this turn. But the final spark going to take out the Wolf Rider does mean that a little bit less overwhelm is coming at Black this turn. I don't think he's actually going to be too upset to just lose the Lux and then replay it. Does have an additional copy of Karma in hand as well. And yeah, it looks like ideally you only want one to die this turn because you can't set them both up again on the following turn. And you would like to have them both by turn 10. Of course, also an option to just throw them all away, throw the Karma down this turn, throw the Lux down next turn, get that Karma Lux goodness going off on the Enlightened turn 10, and start final sparking your way through your opponent's board and life total. Does seem like a pretty good way for Black to pull Team Akdongs back into this one. And so far, Dawn, worth noting, has found very little use of the cards that he has actually plundered from Black. Also has this Black Market Merchant been sitting in hand for a couple of turns. And I actually don't mind the Omen Hawk attack from Dawn. If you are going to start playing units to obliterate your own units because of board space, which looks like it will be an issue for him on the following turn, as every card in his hand does represent a unit, then I'd much rather throw them away and push damage onto something than just obliterate them of my own volition. Actually, strange to me that Riptide Rex was the challenger for the Radiant Guardian. I suppose the health potion onto the Karma just made Dawn read that there's a second health potion. It looks like Prismatic Barrier will be used onto the Lux. Doesn't really care about the 2 health on it, just wants to save the unit, not have to commit 6 mana to it later, instead just committing the 3 mana Lux's Prismatic Barrier. I can respect it. Life total's relatively close, 15 to 11. It's going to get evened up on the next turn when a final spark comes out. Radiant Guardian comes down for Dawn off the Remembrance, though I don't think that's actually going to make too much of a difference once this final spark comes down to blast it out. And Deep Meditation now online as a 2-mana spell. Don't want to fire both of them off this turn. I think you are just one away from the Karma Enlightenment. One of them, yeah, I don't hate getting one of them down. Hand space does certainly become an issue between the Deep Meditations and the Karma's Inside of Ages. And Dawn, with a lot of, Black rather, with a lot of resources, just actually has to find the opportunity to make the mana line up. Needs to play as much as possible, as often as he can, though doesn't have any great targets for this Will of Ionia. Ritual of Renewal, a little bit of an awkward card. Going to see Valor come out now. This is one of the ones that I would have liked to see come out on the following turn. You do kind of have to manage things that you play this turn versus the double up that you want. Does just value getting the final spark though, so definitely can get behind that one. It does seem like the most valuable spell or the least valuable spell rather, so the one that you want to throw away just to generate a spark and start fighting your opponent for the board. See the Yordle Grifter come down, and No Allegiance does continue to hold Dawn in first place for Unluckiest Player of the Year. And the final spark going down onto the Sejuani does mean that Valor will be challenging her out. We can see from Dawn's hand there is the warning shot coming out, going to upgrade the Sejuani. Does still only put her at 2 HP though, not enough to survive the Valor. But we do see the Black Market Merchant come down, pick up a Badger Bear. Just more and more units in the hand of Dawn, unable to find spells from Black's deck. Did find the 2 Remembrance, but I'm going to count those ones as units because that's what they generate. That is what the spell does. It makes a unit. Might as well count it that way. Valor going to take out the Sejuani. Not a lot of mana on the side of Dawn does mean that Will of Ionia is a possibility for the turn. Remembrance number 2 coming down. And this one also going to be a Radiant Guardian. This is a little bit tough. Dawn does have the Radiant Guardians and the board advantage and the life advantage, but Black has Karma Lux. Excuse me. With both of those going to be upgraded next turn, there is a lot of damage on the side of Dawn, but there's a lot of healing in the side of Black as well. Could even fire off the Ritual Renewal this turn. It's just going to be the Will of Ionia onto the Radiant Guardian instead, it looks like. This does still float 3 spell mana into the following turn, so I definitely don't hate it. Looks like that is going to get locked in. Dawn with 0 mana, not going to be able to do anything about that. And the Radiant Guardians getting cleared out actually does leave a weak-looking board on the side of Dawn. Of course, Black can't play too loose with the life total as there is a fair amount of direct damage coming out of Dawn. Just a lot of overwhelm units and things like that. And the second final spark picked up. Probably going to take out the Black Market Merchant. Looks like it might be aimed at a Grifter instead just to get more stats off the board. But instead, Black, yeah, just going to take out that Grifter. Or that Merchant, rather. The Grifter going to survive. And with double health potion, I don't think that Dawn's board really aligns up too well anymore. We're likely to see an Unyielding Spirit come down next turn as well. Boom! Do you guys like the sound effect? I like doing sound effects. And yeah, just to pass over does mean that the Karma is going to upgrade. Going to get another Valor as the spell. Omen Hawk picked up from Dawn is not what you want to be seeing this late in the game. Karma picked up from Black, also pretty unimpactful. Almost no way that one's going to come down due to hand size and a couple of other things. The only real question is where is this Unyielding Spirit actually going to go? We do see additional copies of both Karma and Lux in the hand of Black. Of course, Lux, more of a mana commitment, but there is something to be said for actually resetting the health value on your units since there is so much Overwhelm coming out of Dawn's deck. But with double health potion, I think we're pretty close to calling this one in favor of Black and tying this one up series 2-2. Team Akdongs against Team River here in the King of Runeterra tournament semifinals, game number 4. If you're wondering why it says round 2, it's because this is the second set of semifinals. The other one has been played out a little bit earlier, and we're going to see full-on attack from Dawn, not going for the generation of other units, not going for the open attack rather than setting up a board. There's not a lot to punish for the board in terms of units coming out of Black, but because there are burst speed spells, you do have to be cognizant of final sparks, so I definitely do like going for this. And it looks like Prismatic Barrier going to come down instead of Unyielding Spirit. That's going to create a final spark. That's going to knock the Radiant Guardian down to 1 health, and that's going to push through a lot of damage with this Karma. Of course, the Prismatic Barrier, one of the spells that actually can get doubled up. That's something that you do have to be cognizant of with these spells from the Karma Lux deck, is what is actually getting doubled up in terms of mana getting banked into the Lux and which one fizzles. For example, Single Combat is an example of a card in Black's hand where if he wants to throw that down onto a unit, it is very likely that the second Single Combat would actually fizzle. And it looks like Black reconsidering putting the Karma in harm's way. There are Fury of the Norths in the hand, or in the deck rather, of Dawn. We don't see any in the hand. Just a lot of stolen cards and an Omen Hawk. And this Wolf Rider that never got to come down and actually ramp the Mana Crystal. Is actually going to throw it out there. Says, I have the second Karma in hand. I have 2 more Karmas in hand. I don't really care if you want to throw a Fury of the North to take this one out. Final spark now going to come down onto likely this Radiant Guardian, get that one finished off, as well as push a lot of damage through at the face. 6 damage going to come through, I believe, is how this interacts with the tough. And I'm trying to math this one out, but I think it's not out of the realm of possibility for Black to actually just have lethal this turn. something like a health potion into a Karma's Insight of Ages does create another final spark, and then Valor into another Karma's Insight of Ages does create another final spark. And yeah, I'm pretty sure that's actually lethal here for black. Gonna tie this one up 2-2. And now we just sit here and wait for the players to actually play it out. A lot of animations to go through, but this Karma Lux deck just dismantling this Bilgewater Freljord sort of plunder deck. I'm not personally sold on the plunder strategies. I know they did get thrown onto the watch list by Riot. It's a very unfun strategy to play against, but the tempo doesn't always line up as we see it happen here, although Karma Lux is just one of the better decks of the format, so can't really fault the Pilfer strategy for not working out. This is just a rough matchup for a lot of things. There's final spark number 2. Now we just need to play 2 Karma's Insight of Ages, or Karma's Insight of Ages and a health potion, and that will get us final spark number 3 for the turn, doubled up by the Karma, and finish this one off. Just gonna let this play out, see what random spells we get, any cool goodies. We see another Valor coming out. Valor just sort of the name of the game here for black, and yep, there's the good game Shen coming out from both players. Gonna tie us up, and we're going to a game 5, everybody, here in the King of Runeterra tournament semifinals.
자, 위쪽은 럭르마인 것
와,
같고요.
럭르마에 대 코리나. 맞죠? 저거 혹시 인내하는 자 덱일 수도 있어요. 근데 어렴풋한 광경이 있으니까
네.
한번 봐야 돼. 코리나인지.
코리나인 것 같긴 하거든요. 네.
이거 코리나 같거든요. 이거 진짜 제대로 물렸는데요.
네, 신비한 화살이
이거는 너무 상성인데요, 진짜로.
네. 신비한 화살이 들어 있는 걸
Game number 5 of Team Akdongs versus Team River. The winner of this goes through to the finals, and it looks like Team Akdongs have put their captain Pegasos in for this 5th and final game. Team River going to be going back to Chenia, and I feel like even though there's a wide variety of decks from both of these teams, we've seen quite a few repeats so far throughout the series, but it looks like both teams are switching to an unused deck. Pegasos pulling out the Karina Veraza control, and Chenia switching over to the Karma Lux that we did just see get a lot done here in game number 4 to tie it up for Team Akdongs. Gonna see the block from the Eye of the Dragon onto the Spiderling. Purify is a card that is, I don't want to say useless in this matchup because it does stop Commander Ladros from recycling himself, but overall, I definitely think that Karma Lux is favored in this Karina matchup. It can be a little bit hard to take out the Lux unless you have exactly Thermogenic Beam or the Vengeance. Just a lot of high health units coming out of the deck, and we're actually going to see a Thermo Beam have to take out the Badger Bear, which is another reason that the Karma Lux feels favored. While both of these decks do want to take it to the late game and both have these sort of supplementary early to mid game strategies to aggro out their opponent, I do feel like that Karma Lux has the better end of that one with the Badger Bears and Grizzled Rangers just lining up a little bit better than things like the Brood Awakening and the Frenzied Skitterer on the side of the Karina deck. But so far, the early game in the advantage of Pegasos, as Elise will tend to do that on her own. If not a lot comes out in the early game, she can just kind of take it over. And it's going to be a little bit hard for Chenia to actually get off some Dragonlings. Not that he needs to this early on, the life total's not mattering a whole lot, but with a couple of dead cards in hand on the side of Chenia, definitely going to want to see Pegasos try and press this advantage. But turn 4, we do see the Remembrance come out thanks to the banked spell mana. The spell mana system of Legends of Runeterra, one of my favorite adaptations, and we see a Naked Radiant Guardian, likely the worst thing that you could get in just about any situation, especially once we see these scout buffs come through in patch 1.2, buffing that Great Horn up to a 5/5. Just going to make Remembrance a lot better of a card. Not that it's a bad one at the moment, I definitely think this is probably one of my favorite spells in the game, just the amount of things that it can do, it's really cool. But yeah, this Radiant Guardian going to kind of swing things back in Chenia's favor. Elise doesn't match up too well into 5/5s, which is to be expected, but looks like Pegasos considering maybe even a block into a Glimpse Beyond. Not going to be the case, but Pegasos definitely with a very early game focused hand. does just kind of want to sit here and stall out into the Commander Ladros turns, but we are a long way off of turn 9, and Chenia's deck is going to turn on before that. Chenia, the quality of hand on Chenia's side also feels pretty low. Yeah, this single combat not going to get a lot done. It really kind of depends on what comes off this deep meditation. Karma isn't going to be able to come down anytime soon. Will of Ionia, historically, not particularly useful in this matchup. Overall, just a lot of the removal that is coming out of Karma Lux is not valuable in the matchup against this Karina deck, but we do see the Skitterer and Elise on board, so can get a little bit done. As I mentioned, we are quite a ways off turn 9, and Pegasos doesn't have anything that makes an impact anyway, and actually just going to forgo the attacks. Down on cards, down on life, and the Grizzled Ranger picked up for Chenia. Just going to continue to snowball this mid-game advantage that he's got going for himself. Doesn't even mind passing the turn 5 as he was out of spell mana thanks to the Remembrance. Going to bank that back up, and Pegasos firing off the Withering Wail onto the Grizzled Ranger is just going to get a Badger Bear out of that. Pegasos has the opportunity to go for something like an Elise Evolution this turn if they really want to. Single combat as an option for Chenia to sort of turn that one off, but curious to see if it's even an option that he wants to go for. I think these Glimpse Beyonds need to come down pretty soon, so there's not a lot of removal that Chenia wants to be using, especially if you just play something like an Elise's Crawling Sensation here. Eating the 9 is a little bit scary. There is quite a bit of healing in Pegasos' deck, but since we are into the Lux turn, you do have to be cognizant of the fact that your opponent can just start firing off Final Sparks onto your Spiderlings, and Glimpse Beyond doesn't necessarily help in that case because the spell does have Overwhelm. Sort of the whole identity of Lux here. But yeah, as I mentioned, I think this Karma Lux deck is favored, and we're kind of seeing it here. Both players kind of getting the early to mid-game strategy that they were hoping for, and it looks a lot better on the side of the Karma Lux deck. Loyal Badger Bear is just some sort of a nightmare for these control decks, and it's, I think, a big reason that we've seen Karma Lux find a resurgence into the meta. Pre-Rising Tides, it was played, but it felt a little bit cheesy, a little high-rolly. Now that you have Grizzled Rangers and Badger Bears to help you scale out the mid-game, I think the deck is a lot more consistent. Even Eye of the Dragon, like we saw it come down, we haven't seen it get any value yet. No Dragonlings fired off because this just isn't the kind of matchup where you feel like that's something that you need to do. So really a big fan of this deck. I understand why it's been seeing so much play recently. It looks like a single combat consideration coming out onto the Elise, which does mean Pegasos is going to have to fire off one of these Glimpse Beyonds finally. Of course, a consideration also to just Mystic Shot onto the Radiant Guardian and actually get this off the board. It does seem like Pegasos' best opportunity to actually kill this one out. We would see the Health Potion come out as a response from Chenia, so I would like to see this Mystic Shot fired off now. Because if Pegasos lets this through and then fires the Mystic Shot, that would be an absolute disaster. This way, the Radiant Guardian only lives at 1 HP. Although, if the Health Potion comes out, I do think we see the Glimpse Beyond come out from Pegasos. Sort of a rough play here for him to make, but it really depends on how much you value the health of this Radiant Guardian. If the Health Potion does come out and you let all this go, then you are down to 2 units, 2 Glimpse Beyond that you have no great targets for. Would almost certainly have to proactively fire one off onto a hapless Aristocrat, in which case there's a non-zero chance that Chenia throws out the Purify, as saving it for the Ladros is cool and all, but I don't think it's necessary, and just taking more and more units off of Pegasos' board could be the play that they want to go for here. And Pegasos, it's not unreasonable to just let all of this resolve. Oh, actually going to go for the Get Excited now, so this is actually kind of interesting. It does mean that the Radiant Guardian will get taken out before the single combat. Elise will live and will get the evolution off. Although, with such little cards in hand, the Vengeance pickup is good. This is kind of what Pegasos wanted. Now the Elise upgrade, I don't think actually has a big impact on this game, though. The Remembrance, if it gets a Radiant Guardian, or if just any of the Radiant Guardians in Chenia's deck can be picked up, the life total not super impactful here is sort of the point that I'm trying to make. It all just kind of comes down to when Commander Ladros comes down. If you can get your opponent into a spot where you can win the game with a Karina Varaza, that's all well and good, but we're going to need to see a Glimpse Beyond fired off soon, and as cool as the play was to actually take out the Radiant Guardian, it does mean that it takes away a lot of draw power out of Pegasos, who was already down on cards to begin with. And while the play does work out in terms of getting an Elise evolution, I'm not convinced that it was the right one, as I don't think that this is actually the most impactful. It was an awkward situation for sure, and I don't think I really hate any of the plays that were made. Like I said, if you just go for a Glimpse Beyond onto the hapless Aristocrat, you're actually in an extremely rough spot because of the Purify. And now a Remembrance coming out from Chenia. Pegasos considering this one. I think looking through the sidebar to see the removal options that have been used from Chenia so far realizes that Concerted Strikes and Single Combats galore are still on the table. Only one single combat has been used so far. And really debating, this is not the kind of thing that you want a Vengeance, but if a Radiant Guardian comes out here, your Elise evolution means even less. Swiftwing Lancer, a pretty good one as well, depending on the elite that pops out of it. Something like Cythria the Bold could swing the game very heavily for Chenia and end it very soon. Something like a Border Lookout could be completely useless. But we do still see a lot more card generation out of Chenia than we do for Pegasos. I think Pegasos wanted to fire off a proactive Glimpse Beyond this turn, but doesn't have the Vengeance mana backup, which he would need if Single Combat came back out. Brood Awakening is actually a pretty good pickup. Unfortunately, the Elise going to die this turn. Does mean that the Spiders will no longer have Fearsome Challenger, but Brood Awakening, not a terrible pickup nonetheless. Although Pegasos needs to find either a Vi or ideally a Commander Ledros, right? Like, there's really no two ways about it. The Karina deck should just be called the Commander Ledros deck. Karina doesn't feel like anywhere near as valuable as it has in the past, especially with the addition of Vi to the deck. I feel like we see a lot less spells in the deck than we have in previous Karina versions, and even just the change of one or two spells in the deck really affects the percentage of your Karina. There we do see the Border Lookout that I had mentioned actually come out of the Swiftwing Lancer. Absolutely, unequivocally the worst elite that you could possibly get out of it. Does function as a blocker, but just barely. This card can barely be called a unit in my mind. I want to see him stripped of his title and demoted back down to non-elite just to get Swiftwing Lancer a better suited spot in the meta. But I do understand, since it's mainly coming out of Remembrance these days, you kind of want to keep that one in line. So I'm definitely not mad to see the Border Lookout not lose the elite tag. It would feel like a weird sort of change that they made, because it was supposed to be a buff initially because Battlesmith Demacia was still being played at the time, and they were like, yeah, this might as well be an elite. And then as we saw the Battlesmith version completely go away, it is now just something that pops out of Swiftwing Lancer sometimes, which definitely wasn't the intention to nerf Swiftwing Lancer, but definitely feels a little bit more balanced with that in the death pool, especially with the Remembrance buff of Great Horn coming out of patch 1.2. So this is where we see the proactive Glimpse Beyond fired off. It looks like Will of Ionia gonna be the answer. Will of Ionia, as I mentioned, not a card that gets a lot of value in this matchup. Vi is definitely a great target for it. It does reset her attack. But even if Pegasos found a Vi at this point, she'd be pretty weak, and it looks like Vengeance is gonna come down onto the Karma while Deny Mana isn't available, but there is just a second Karma in Chenia's hand. And right now, both players are actually looking really weak in terms of their resources. Brood Awakening is good, but not great. Doesn't really get a lot done in terms of the life total. The Vengeance is going to come down here. Onto the Karma. No, excuse me. Yeah, the board more or less even. The card advantage in Chenia's favor. The life total's dead even. And neither player really has a lot of over-the-top damage at this point. It's really coming down to top decks. Pegasos, if he can find this Commander Ledros, there's not a great answer out of the side of Chenia. Of course, does still have the Deep Meditation, which makes me think that he is solely in control of this matchup so far. Single Combat, another good pickup. And Atrocity is about as bad as a top deck gets, as we haven't seen Commander Ledros come out yet. Or even a Karina Veraza. Karina would have been great here, wipe out the board, although the chances of a deny coming out of this, yeah, gonna be 100%. We do see deny and Will of Ionia picked up off the deep meditation, and it looks like the deny actually will come out onto the Brood Awakening, denying the board generation out of Pegasos, who does not seem happy to see that one, and that leaves him with an extremely weak board of a couple of spiders. But it does mean that the refuel for Chenia has been used as well. No more surprise what comes out of the deep meditations. We do know what it was, and Will of Ionia, as mentioned, not great against the top end of Pegasos, but he hasn't managed to find any of it yet, and Chenia not finding a Lux either. Both players just now picking up their early game units. We see Eye of the Dragon and the Hapless Aristocrat, and just the health totals of the board solely on the side of Chenia. We might even see Karma come out here just to help kind of push through the spider board and try and get the damage off onto Pegasos. Not going to be the case. Withering Whale picked up. Really just weak top decks from both players back and forth. Getting down the Karma doesn't actually mean anything for Chenia. None of the spells in their hand get matter at all to get doubled up. And yeah, we're just going to see continuous passes back and forth. Who can draw the right cards? Elise, really not a great one either. It is a little cool that it gets to take out this Loyal Badger Bear that Chenia picked up. But not before Chenia gets to attack with it. Actually just going to take the damage as Pegasos, which is a little surprising to me. There is a lot of over-the-top damage in the Karma Lux deck solely because of the Lux. Yeah, it's the Elise actually not even going to come down now. We see Mystic Shot. Just, this is kind of the problem with the Karina decks. The Glimpse Beyond getting thrown away from the Get Excited. Really coming back to bite Pegasos here. And the other Glimpse Beyond getting shut down just means that no draw powers come out, and it's very hard to organically draw into these 9-drops. Progress Day is something that we saw get cut from these decks quite some time ago. It was really only in the earlier iterations of Karina control. Elise finally going to come down. Shadow Assassin going to be the response from Chenia, perhaps. Could just wait until after combat, as I do think this Elise is pretty likely to actually go down and challenge out this Loyal Badger Bear. We do see the single combat actually to guarantee that that's going to happen. And it looks like Pegasos, considering an atrocity, just going to let this one go. The Badger Bear is kind of what you wanted to take out with the Elise. If Chenia is going to offer that one up to you, I don't see a reason to not let it happen. And the Radiant Guardian top deck is massive. Both players have had such a weak, stalemated board for so long, and now Chenia is going to blow that wide open. With this Radiant Guardian, Tough Life still going to swing the life total heavily back into their favor, and if Pegasos doesn't find a Commander Ladros immediately, he is in trouble. Lux off the top for Chenia, Frenzied Skitterer for Pegasos, and I do believe that, ladies and gentlemen, we have entered Limbo, the state where the game is over but has not ended. Don't see a way back into this one for Pegasos. The Lux almost certainly going to end this one. If the Radiant Guardian wasn't enough, Lux is the final nail in the coffin. And I do believe that that means Team River will be moving on to the finals, picking this one up in game number 5. Yeah, Pegasos just going to go down to 2, realizes there's not much of a difference between any of these life totals, as the Radiant Guardian would push through for 4. Lux could come down now at any time, get that final spark, and just blast through one of these Spiderlings for lethal. Has the opportunity to do it this turn if they want to. Would be a little weird. Would have to use things like the single combat and the Will of Ionia. It looks like Pegasos, with the Vile Feast pickup, is just considering the surrender. Just bowing out of the tournament. But we're going to play out a little bit longer. I think both players at this point can't have more than 20, 22 cards in deck. I know not a lot of draw power has come out from Pegasos, but it is pretty likely that he would have picked up a Ladros or Karina at this point. Even a Vi would have helped to swing things back in his favor. I know I had mentioned how small the Vi would be, but I really didn't anticipate close to 4 turns of just passing back and forth. Actually would have given a lot of time for the Vi to ramp up. And if that had happened, it really could have taken over the game, at least gotten this board under control from Chenia. And actually, funny enough, so far in this tournament, we have seen a lot of Eye of the Dragons come out, and I don't think we've seen a single Dragonling generated so far. Not that it really mattered this game. Yeah, we're just going to see both players continue to pass. Looks like Chenia is going to look to end this one with this attack turn here. Shadow Assassin coming out. We know the Shadow Assassin isn't going to work. The Mystic Shot's going to come snuff it out. I do think that Chenia is slow rolling this one a little bit. Does need to get this Lux down. Of course, feels like they can't lose at this point, even if Commander Ledros did come down. There's so many answers on the side of Chenia. As long as this Radiant Guardian is alive, he can claw the life total back. And does have things like Single Combat, Purify, and Will of Ionia to stop an atrocity finish from Pegasos. So we're just going to see blocks lined up. Yeah, this is... Double Withering Wail is probably going to come out here. Maybe it is just the Mystic Shot to take out the Shadow Assassin, but yeah, it's just going to be a singular Withering Wail. I don't think there's really anything that Chenia wants to do about this. With the life total out of range, or with the mana total rather out of range of Ruination, I think this is where the Lux finally comes down and we do see the game end in Chenia's favor. There's a little bit more healing out of Pegasos' side, so it might not end this turn, which is sort of the purpose of Limbo. We don't know how long it's going to last, but we definitely don't think Pegasos could have gotten back into this game in any way. It's actually just going to be a pass going to the untaps. We see the Karina Veraza come out, but this is entirely too late. Chenia has complete domination of both the board, life total, and hand size. Karina going to come out, and there is just an opportunity to upgrade the Lux here. Really just up to Chenia on how he wants to finish this one off. Sort of like if you've ever played Dungeons and Dragons and you kill something and the Dungeon Master says, okay, how do you want to do it? It's kind of what we're looking at for Chenia here. Just how do you want to do this one? The game is yours. Looks like he wants to do it with a Will of Ionia and a Purify. Going to upgrade the Lux. Guarantee that she survives the Karina Veraza. Pegasos probably going to fire off a Vile Feast onto it, although not guaranteed to hit 5, and honestly I think it's really unlikely, given the amount of Vi's and given that there are 3 Vi and 3 Commander Ledros left in Pegasos' deck, as well as a few other units. I think there's a pretty good chance that this Karina only gets 2 or 3. And the Vile Feast actually might not even come out because he knows that, realizes that hitting 5 is very unlikely. There's even a non-zero chance that we see 0 hit on this Karina, which is sort of the problems that I have with the modern Karina builds. Karina almost feels like an outdated card in the deck, as it gets very little value, I feel. No, we actually high roll our way into a 4, as well as see exactly how far off of the Commander Ledros that Pegasos was. And with the Karma coming down now to double up the final spark, there is nothing that can be done on the side of Pegasos. And that's going to be Team River moving on to the finals. Karma Lux picking it up against the Karina control.